to be self-evident that all men are created equal.
Dr. King, at that famous presentation, denounced militarism, materialism, and racism. And I think it is, from the perspective of this conservative, I think it's fair to say that that indictment still applies now.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
George Floyd killing and other similar incidents have in this moment evoked a greater awareness of the legacy of racism in American society. That's a good thing. What hasn't happened, I think, is an awareness of the problems of materialism and militarism. I think the policies of Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama gave us Donald Trump. In other words, the policies of interventionism, the greater reliance on using military force, that by 2016 had produced these so-called endless wars. And that created the opportunity for Donald Trump to advertise himself as the president who was going to end endless wars, which of course he has not done. Our penchant for relying on armed force, particularly as an instrument of foreign policy, dates back to World War II. At World War II, as the American people have been coached to remember it. So the so-called lessons of World War II, compounded by lessons of the Cold War, compounded by the experience of the post-Cold War era, have created a sense of expectations that armed forces are strong suit. And therefore there is this inclination, rarely questioned, to spend lots of money on the military, to design the military as an instrument for projecting power as opposed to simply defending the United States, to maintain this broad network of bases, to export vast amounts of arms. And sadly, that set of practices doesn't get a heck of a lot of critical attention. It's just more or less, in Washington, it's more or less accepted as the way we do business. Well, I don't think we do maintain a dominant position in the world. When the Cold War ended, such claims were made. There was a claim made that that we could describe the world as a unipolar order, that the United States was the sole superpower. I think that was always an illusion. And even to the extent that it had some substantive merit, let's say in 1990, it has none today. Ours is a multipolar order. The United States is still a very important player in that multipolar order, but we're not the only one. Obviously, China is another. And then there's a very important, what we might call second tier. Who's in the second tier? Well, Japan, the EU, Russia, probably we should add India, Turkey, and so on. None of these nations can be ignored, can be set aside. And so if there's any hope for having international stability in the 21st century, it's going to come as a result of taking into account the vital interest of all of these different nations, so that everybody is satisfied. And I think that the challenge of doing that is just enormous. And again, the challenge becomes more urgent when we factor in problems like climate change. So all the talk of global dominion, unipolar order, sole superpower, that just all gets in the way of serious thinking about the problems that we are facing in this century. Well, yes. I mean, there's no question, I think, that the security challenges facing the United States are changing, and one reminder of that change. We were not prepared. We did not respond well. And so we end up with over 200,000 dead Americans. It's a catastrophic failure. And it's a failure that in some respects reflected misplaced priorities. So there is a new agenda, a new national security agenda that is begging to be recognized. And disease is going to have a place on that agenda. Climate is going to have a place on that agenda. The movement of populations is going to have a place on that agenda. And so are more traditional concerns like terrorism or great power rivalry. I don't think that the national security establishment in the United States has yet fully embraced the complexity of this new environment that is emerging. National security elites need to be open to learning. They're not. At least they're not sufficiently. And so we fixate on traditional security concerns. And I think there's a strong argument to be made that in the 21st century, it's the non-traditional security concerns that are actually going to pose a greater threat to the well-being of the American people. Doesn't mean you ignore traditional concerns. It means that you need to be able to do more things at the same time.